Hello, and welcome to the Three Questions podcast, where we dive deep into the world of wealth management and connect you with industry experts. I'm your host, Wayne Baxter, Senior Executive Manager at One Capital Management. Have you or someone close to you tried to find a missing beneficiary or inheritance asset? Well, you are not alone, believe it or not. Our topic today, the three questions attorneys, executors, and trustees should ask when trying to locate missing beneficiaries or inheritance. Thank you for taking time to check us out. And if you enjoy this episode of the Three Questions podcast, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. On this episode of the podcast, we're tackling a hidden crisis in estate planning, missing beneficiaries or unclaimed inheritances. With over $70 billion in unclaimed assets sitting dormant in U.S. state treasuries alone, and similar issues in Canada, estates often, where estates often cross borders, failing to locate heirs or assets can lead to lost fortunes, legal headaches, and, needless to say, family disputes. Whether it's a forgotten investment account or a distant relative in another country, the right steps can make all the difference. Joining us today from Orlando, Florida is Michael Zwick, whose firm, Assets International LLC, has recovered over $200 million for clients worldwide. What's our topic today? The three questions attorneys, executors, and trustees should ask when trying to locate missing beneficiaries or inheritances. Michael, great to see you again. I love the T-shirt. I need to hear the backstory here on the NJIT, it's like New Jersey Institute of Technology.
Yes, it is. Well, first of all, Wayne, glad to be here. Thank you for having me as a guest. So yes, I collect college t-shirts. Most of my t-shirts I will buy in person. The ones that are exceptions are ones where these schools have been clients of mine. So my company, in addition to finding missing heirs, also finds unclaimed funds for not only people, but also for-profit and nonprofit institutions.
Interesting.
And some of those include schools, which after they become a client, I get a t-shirt. So a number of years ago, we recovered about $10,000 for the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and I honored the occasion by getting myself a t-shirt.
Well, very cool. I think you're the first T-shirt guest I've had since I've been. My friend Mark Nielsen, he's a big hockey fan like me, and he wore his LA Kings sweater, I think, to one of my podcasts. But unexpected, kind of surprised me, but looks great. Um, okay, no, before we get to our questions, though, I need you just to spend a couple minutes on this topic about, why is this such a common problem? I mean, when I first met you, I got to admit, I thought, how does he make that into a business? So how is this such a common matter of, missing assets and missing beneficiaries? Because it has
Uh,
turned out, obviously, you clearly made it into an incredible business for yourself.
well, thank you. It happens. Sometimes people don't bother to tell their family members what they own, and they just leave assets behind. Other times, people don't even know they have assets. So there are plenty of times with certain where someone might be um, had insurance policies. A big example of that was with the what's called demutualization of the insurance of life insurance companies, where companies people would buy policies in mutual insurance companies, which made them quasi-owners of the insurance companies. Then all of a sudden, when the companies went public as stock-owned companies years later, they were issued stock, and these money just was turned over because the stock was turned over to the states to hold on for people. But a lot of it also people move, people leave behind assets. I was just texting with a friend of mine from Detroit who has about $20,000 sitting with the state of Michigan Unclaimed Property Division, just money's fortunately does pretty well for himself, and he kind of forgot about this, that, and the other thing, and it piled up to about $20,000 of various money that's owed to him. People move, people forget about what they have, or will forget to tell people what they have, and that's often how money gets left behind.
Well, you know what? As early as maybe a couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't be able to specifically identify with this, but actually, as of today, I can because just recently I had a conversation with a client of mine who had opened, I'm sure they're listening to this, they're going to be nodding their head going, that's us. They opened up investment accounts for their two daughters and never told them.
Yeah.
their daughters had no idea, and literally it's just unfolded here. Well, the accounts have been open for a while,
Yeah.
but this just came to light, and literally, I would say in the last 48 hours. So
We had a case like that a few years ago where we found $600,000 in some blue chip stocks like Pepsi, Cola, and some other companies what that a woman who had passed away years before had bought, probably many years before, and obviously appreciated value. And she named her two sons, who by the time she passed away were both adult truck drivers. Never bothered to tell them about the stock, and then next thing you know, we find $600,000 waiting for these two brothers, and obviously it was nice,
nice surprise.
nice surprise for them exactly.
Wow. Okay, well, we're discussing today the three questions attorneys, executors, and trustees should ask when trying to locate missing beneficiaries or inheritances. And we're going to start again. And these, again, these are from the perspective of either the inheritors or the beneficiaries, I guess we'll call them. So, question number one, Michael. My uncle in Canada recently passed away. We can't locate one of the beneficiaries of his estate. What happens to their share if they can't be found?
So in Canada and in many states, the executor, well, everywhere the executor of the estates or the administrator, depending on the terminology in a particular jurisdiction, has to make efforts to find the person or people who are due their inheritance, to get them their inheritance. Um, you know, how far they have to go depends state to state. Some states are much stricter on that front. New York, for example, is very strict on requiring executors to really dig deep into finding people. Other states, Michigan, I can tell you, is fairly loose. So in Canada, it varies from court to court and province to province. Um, but generally speaking, what happens after the fact, if they can't be found and the court's satisfied that the executor has done everything they could to find people who just can't. So in Canada, the money generally gets turned over to the court or someone appointed by the court as a trustee to hold on to that money. In the United States, for what's worth, it varies from state to state. The principles of probate in both Canada and US tend to be fairly universal, the basic ideas, but the little nuanced rule, like in a situation like this, do vary from state to state. So in some states, the money goes to the state unclaimed property division. Some states, it goes to the county treasurer. Some states, there's no law on the books that just so basically the executor holds on to the money and is supposed to hold on to the money and keep it separate. So this way, if the heir ever comes forward and to claim it, they can. Whether executors do, that's up to them.
So, from the perspective of the executor or trustee, depending on whether US or Canada,
Yeah.
what are the key steps they should be taking to conduct a thorough investigation for a missing beneficiary, especially in a cross-border case like this, a Canadian estate? And again, with the perspective of not being lost forever. And so ultimately, is it, for example, you mentioned earlier, it is the trustee or the executor's responsibility. But what steps should they be taking? Are there key things they should be doing?
First thing to do, if they don't want to call me first, which obviously is nice
That's
to
the
do,
obvious. Call me.
is start talking to family members, and even family members who are not necessarily heirs but might have information. A lot of families have that one person who kind of keeps track of everybody. I know for a number of years, my mother and her family was that person who, mother has a pretty large family. Both my grandparents on my mother's side had four siblings, and I probably somewhere, I would say somewhere around 100, well over 100 second cousins on my mother's side.
Right.
My mother could tell you who everybody was and where they lived and stuff like that. My cousin has since kind of taken over that role of being sort of the family genealogist, historian. So that's always good if you have that person to find out. They can tell you, oh yeah, last I heard, Johnny was living in Halifax. Or so that there, then you can start zeroing in on, calling, directory assistants for the city or checking where they are, because especially if someone has a
Or
common name,
even
like
using online now these days, you could also like check
right.
Facebook, Instagram, X,
Yeah,
etc.
but the issue is, for example, someone like Wayne Baxter is a fairly common name.
I
So
discovered that to be the case.
yeah, so yeah, you need a little more information than just the name Wayne Baxter
Fair.
to zero in on the person. Um, a lot of names, I'll tell you, Michael Zwick is not as rare as you would think it is. And at one point, when I used to practice law, there were five attorneys named Zwick in the state of Michigan. I was one of two named Michael. So you'd be
Interesting.
surprised. Yeah, I won't tell you. The other one got a little bit of trouble, which gave me a hard, with the law. So it got me into a little.
There's a little history there.
Yeah, but anyways, so yeah, you want to start with that, like kind of just asking around for the family, like who knows where this person might be, or they last were. Um, and then just kind of make some calls, but frankly, there's only so much in terms of resources that are out there for free beyond asking people who happen to know that person. And that's where, not to toot my own horn, but where someone like me comes in and has the skills and tools to find people that is not generally available to the general public.
Okay, so Michael Zwick joins us today from beautiful Orlando, Florida. Okay, so Michael, let's move on to question number two. We recently met our late father's estate planning attorney and discovered that there appears to be missing investment accounts. What are our next steps in locating these assets?
So, again, talking to some people can definitely help. Talking when you're talking about, excuse me, did a little slip of the tongue there. Yeah, when you're talking about like assets, obviously maybe talking to the deceased accountant or other people who might have handled their finances, pulling their recent tax returns, because that will usually give information about where they had income from. So if they had investment accounts and they were getting income from there, it would be mentioned in the tax return. So those are always good things. Going through their email, if you can get access to email, because a lot of people nowadays get their account statements via email versus paper. My father, who is 89, just recently retired as CPA, is still old school. And as we're kind of doing some work for him, my brother-in-law and I, we convinced my father, it's time to start going to paperless statements and getting them via email after all this time. But so it's getting into email, because you can look for the monthly account statements that come in. Those are some of the things you can do. Obviously, also going through someone's mail. If they're, even the go through email and going through regular mail is not mutually exclusive. So you might want to go through the mail that the person's getting to see what mail they were getting in terms of account statements or whatever. Bank statements, because if they had, withdrawals. So a lot of people set up auto withdrawals of a certain amount of the month to go into their IRA. So you want to check bank statements. Those are all really good things to do. And you know there are a few others, but those are kind of the top of the mind ones.
So, you think about just as a follow-up to that, like what I don't know if you want to call them pitfalls or what are the major barriers that families encounter when they're searching for like a missing investment account or because it's usually paper trail issue. Like what are the roadblocks that you people come to you like they're frustrated, they're to the point where they want to come and they hire you because we know there's an investment account there, we can't find it. Like what are they telling you? What's their frustration?
So a lot of it is the bureaucracy. Most investments tend to be with large institutions. Large institutions have large bureaucracies and obstacles, and what they require for claiming for getting assets transferred or even identified. So some people just they'll say, "Oh, I think there's I think so and so off the pension account, whatever. I don't know who to talk to. I can't deal with it." There's obviously also the emotional aspect. the people who are dealing with this are often usually the close relatives of someone who died, and usually within the first months after the person has passed away, and they're grieving. They've lost a loved one, and sometimes they just can't deal with it. Sometimes they can't even articulate they can't deal with it. It's too painful for them
Hmm.
to deal with that because that's they you know not to play amateur psychologist here, but for some people, once they wrap up the financial affairs, that's that's kind of they feel like that's the end of the story for the person who passed away. So
Hmm.
they keep pushing it off and keep pushing it off. And the problem is the longer you wait, the harder it is because the institutions then will, close the accounts. They might turn over to unclaimed property, and that makes it even harder to claim the assets. So a lot of it's just, not able to deal with it. Also, some people just don't have the time. A lot of people who are handling estates, who are serving as executors or trustees, usually are the adult children. So they usually tend to be people in their 40s or 50s who, in addition to grieving, they usually have kids, they have a
Family,
job,
business, life
family,
happening.
exactly. And I think back to a few years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine in Detroit, which I'm originally from, who's the rabbi of a large congregation, and he told me that when his father passed away, that it hurt a lot, but because he counseled other people through major life events, he knew intellectually how to process the emotional pain that he felt. But he said, nothing prepared me for probate. He said, I had no idea what a
Thank God
time,
he doesn't live in California.
yeah. He said, I had no idea what a time and emotion suck
Oh,
probate was going to be. Nothing prepares people for it. It's not like you go to school to be an executor.
no, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
and I should say, yes, there are professional fiduciaries, people who you can hire to be an
Yes,
executor.
but
But most people have to do it alone.
mhm.
And there's no preparation for all the hours you got to spend on um, you know, calling the bank and getting when the bank says we need A, B, C, D documents, like how to get those documents. So it's so overwhelming that people just say, you know what, forget it, I don't care anymore. And it just I can't deal with it anymore.
So when it comes to like property, are there like records like databases or like that can be used anything to be used to speed up process? Like is that like I don't know if that's just one of your secret sauces or but how like what kind of resources do people have to rely on?
So no, it's my fantasy that such a thing should exist.
Oh,
Which there are a lot worse things you could fantasize about. But no, it's
in your
um
dreams, in other words.
exactly. No, that's the misconception that people have is that, well, I do have access to certain databases. It's more just my knowledge after all this years of experience of knowing where things are, and also my team, more so than me myself, have a very unappreciated skill of dealing with bureaucracy, of knowing how to negotiate through and deal with bureaucracy and red tape being thrown at us. My team has, knows how to deal with that. Um, but in terms of, there's no one centralized database. So when we take on a case, we'll generally talk to the family or whoever knew the deceased and get sort of a profile of the person and then that will lead us based on our experience where we think there might be assets. We do not have a definitive database. We never will promise that we're going to get everything because, there are just in America, for example, I don't know, thousands of banks. Now, some of them are obviously very localized. So a bank that only has branches in Michigan, we're not going to look there for someone who lived in Kansas.
No
Uh,
kidding. That makes
but
sense.
someone who lived in Kansas could have banked at Bank of America or Chase or
Wells
whatever.
Fargo or whatever
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. So, um, but also like, where they worked. So based on where they worked, we might say, oh, that person probably has a pension waiting for them or some sort of retirement account. But like I said, we'll also dig into those quote source materials of emails and papers and tax returns to look for clues or signposts as to where assets might be.
Hmm. Okay, well, let's. So but again, there's a lot of what you're telling me basically is there is a lot of skullduggery involved, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it's a lot of old fat, we are definitely living in a modern world and we utilize modern techniques and technology, but at the same time, it's
Good
still
old-fashioned grunt work.
Galveston, shoe leather and just following leads and hoping it works out.
Well, let's go move on to question three, and this one is a bit more proactively thinking here, which I like. So here's question number three, Michael. My parents are in the process of updating our estate plan. What steps can they take to avoid assets unaccounted for when the estate is settled, or in other words, when they pass away?
Right. So, the simple answer is to create and then make sure you constantly update a what I call an inventory of assets, to list the the other people, and make sure that other people have access to that document. Now, so for example, my parents, like I said, my father's 89, my mother's 82. So we sat down, my brother-in-law and I, sat down with them and, I have no idea how much are in the accounts. Like my father said, his whatever accounts at Schwab, I have zero idea how much is in them. And frankly, it's not my business to know at this point.
Right.
But at least I know when that time comes, I know to go to Schwab or I know to go to Bank of America where my mother has a checking account. I know where to go. Not necessarily how much is in the account. I have the account numbers, but um, you want to keep updating those things every year or so. But also, like I said, making sure that p other people will know where that document is so they can access it. Because it doesn't do any good if you write it all down and then you stick it somewhere where no one can find it.
You know what I'm just thinking about in a new world here, and I'm this will this well, I'm gonna say make you pull your hair out, but that would be a ha ha ha. Is digital assets.
Yeah.
What how are you like you got people that out there now that own hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of digital assets. Like what type of how do you deal with trying to find digital assets?
So,
That's a really that because you're
yeah.
dealing with it could be like how do you like where do you start?
Well, like as all other assets, hopefully the person will list them with their inventory of assets as well as the key, the digital key to go with it. Now, some of the ones that are traded on platform on the big platforms, you can get into that without like we worked on a case recently where the deceased had no papers in his apartment, but he had a laptop. So I turned it over, we got the laptop for my client, I turned it over to our IT people. They were able to get in and we were able to find the apps, on the computer for I think it was Robinhood and one of the other big, crypto trading platforms. And the reputable larger ones have teams that are set up to to respond to inquiries from heirs or executors. And we were able to work with them and get the assets that were in there. Um, but again, it all goes down to, in terms of planning, is make sure someone else knows where your assets are and how to get them. Obviously, if you're giving a key, you need to give it to someone you can trust that's not going to take it out because as opposed to a bank account where like I might have my parents' account number and the name of the bank, but I still can't access those funds unless I had a power of
The
attorney.
power of attorney, exactly
Whereas
correct.
with crypto, if you have the key, you're opening the door wide open to whoever has that key.
Well, just I guess one last thing I would ask before we wrap it up here.
Mhm.
Just sort of looking ahead,
Yeah.
one emerging trends, and I think like international estates, we talked about digital assets, or like international estates that are making it harder to locate beneficiaries. And I guess the question I would ask is how can attorneys and executors prepare for that?
So again, as with inventory of assets that you should always be updating. I say the same thing for the list of beneficiaries and heirs, and I use those terms separately because just to
Mhm.
clarify for those who are not aware, an heir is anybody who's the closest relative and is a automatically, at least in the United States, a party to the estate, even if they're not getting anything.
Hmm.
And a beneficiary does not necessarily need to be an heir.
It's been documented, right?
What was that?
Documented. A
Right.
beneficiary.
Right. So in every state, even if someone's not inheriting, if they're an heir at law, so for example, someone disinherits their son, the son is still an heir, even though he's not a beneficiary.
And in
Uh,
theory, could sue if they felt they were wrongly.
Yeah, but
That's
that's the
another
whole
story.
that's yeah. But anyways, so you want and not having all the contact information, not just for beneficiaries, but also for heirs who are not even getting anything, you have to notify them of the proceeding and the if you don't have that information on the ability to contact them, that can really make the process take longer and cost a lot more money. So as with inventory of assets to update that. You want to do the same thing with anybody who is a legal standing in your estate, whether it's as an heir or beneficiary. Make sure that somebody knows as best you can where they are, and what, like, last known address or something like that. It just makes things a whole lot easier.
I guess for international clients, it makes it just even more complex. So,
It does. I mean, people in America don't realize, in the US, don't realize how easy it is to find somebody in terms of their address or whatever being public record. Varies from country to country. Some countries are on par with the United States in that regard. We've located heirs in dozens of countries around the world. There are some countries that are just no-goes for us. Cuba, North Korea.
good
We're
luck.
not we're not finding it. What was that?
Good luck there.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas, we've located people in Pakistan, Norway, Israel, so we can locate people in other countries, but there are just certain countries that are just off. We're never gonna find someone there.
Okay, so Michael, you have a ton of experience. Have you like recovered like hundreds of millions of dollars for people, for your clients? Is there one piece of advice that you would give families, anybody listening to the podcast today or watching, that you would give to them to ensure that their loved ones don't face this headache of missing an inheritance? Is there any last little nugget you would share with them just to leave on that note?
No, I mean, just not to beat a dead horse, but just make sure that whoever you're leaving behind has the information that they need to deal with your estate, and that goes for both assets and beneficiaries.
Yeah, and actually, believe it or not, for those listen, if you're listening in to the podcast, one of the things that I have actually that I've been using this now for like 25 years. Goes back to when I was in Canada, is I have it saved on my network of documents is a good old-fashioned estate directory. That's a fillable PDF document that you can go in and on your computer and just fill in everything, save it, and then share it with, the most obvious folks, which would be your trustee, and probably your powers of attorney as well. And again, like you said, you don't have to put in the financial information per se, but you can put account at Bank of America, account number
Mhm.
XYZ 123, whatever it is. And who is the estate planning attorney, by the way? That's another thing. People don't even know who the parents' representatives are or the owner's representatives are, which even makes it more complex. So if
Right.
you're listening to the podcast and you want a copy of an estate directory, just reach out to me and I'll be happy to share it.
Great.
Okay, I guess I gotta say this. We've been covering a lot here. I've been great guest. The folks that are watching us, Michael, they can see how to contact you. We've got all of your contact information underneath you on the screen. But we have a lot of people listening on Apple, on Spotify, and they may be in a position where they need to talk to you. So if that's the case, how can they reach you?
So the best way to reach me is either email mzwick, so my first initial last name, at assetsinternational.com. Assets International is the name of my company. You can also reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on there. I'm pretty easy to find because I'm pretty sure I must have been the first Michael Zwick on LinkedIn because I believe my LinkedIn is linkedin.com/Michael Zwick. So,
Pretty
but if you look,
good.
I should be pretty easy to find.
All right. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much. What a great conversation, really educational, informative. Brought a new topic to light here for the audience here with the Three Questions podcast, and I can't thank you enough for making time, and making yourself available today for us. Really
My
appreciate it.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you, Michael. Michael Zwick joined us today from Orlando, Florida. He is the CEO and investigator in chief of Assets International LLC. Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome.
I look forward to bringing you the Three Questions podcast, and I hope you find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. And to receive a notification of when our latest episode has been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Now, lastly, but not least, to schedule an online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thank you, and we will see you soon.